Welcome to the White House. Please be seated. It is a great honor for the President and me to have all of you here on the South Lawn. Who could ever forget that mere steps from here on a brilliant, cloudless morning in September of 1993, Prime Minister Rabin helped set Israelis and Palestinians on the unalterable path of peace, with the handshake seen round the world. Thank you for joining us and sharing this day of remembrance. I particularly want to thank Leah and Dahlia, Noah, Yaval, and the Prime Minister's sister, Rahel, who is here with us. We are also honored to have members of Congress, Congressman and Mrs. Lantos, Congressman John Lewis, Congresswoman Nita Lowey. And we are also honored to have ambassadors from countries in the region. And we are very honored to have them representing those states and governments that worked with Prime Minister Rabin. There are many people we could thank for this occasion and this day, but most of all, I want to thank our friend, Leah. She and I have come to know each other, and I have come to admire and love her very much. We've been together through some of the most painful and joyous times that the world has seen in the last 6 years. And on every occasion, whether it was that day of the handshake or that scorching hot day when everyone hugged and cried as the border between Israel and Jordan in Arava swung wide open, or the day here back at the White House when your husband, Leah, signed the Israeli-Palestinian interim agreement and my husband helped him straighten his black tie, the day of Yitzhak's funeral when you said goodbye to your beloved husband, and when we all said shalom to a dear and trusted friend. And again, just last month, when she and I were together, when His Majesty King Hussein was laid to rest. We have celebrated together when peace has taken wing, and we have mourned together when the peacemakers' lives have been tragically cut short. Today is a day for celebrating the contributions of your heroic husband, a time for bringing the Yitzhak Rabin Center for Israeli Studies to life. I hope you have seen the model that is on display, because the design incorporates hints of the ancient Western Wall in a setting as modern and lush as the nation that he helped to defend and build. The center will be far more than a monument. When it opens its doors 2 years from now, it will be a vital institute, a museum, an archive, a library, a place where scholars and students and parents and children will learn about and engage in the causes of tolerance and peace. It will be constant and perpetual proof that this great man did not die in vain. I think everyone remembers the funeral when Leah's poised and beautiful granddaughter, Noah, who was with us, brought the entire world to tears with her loving portrait of her grandfather. "Grandfather, you were and still are our hero," she said. "I wanted you to know that every time I did anything, I saw you in front of me." I believe many of us still see him in front of us. I know that he is a constant reminder and a challenge that we do what we can to follow his example. I'm grateful to all of you for gathering here today. And it is now my pleasure to introduce a woman who will be the chair of the executive committee of the center. She is one of Israel's top labor lawyers, and she's actually made up her mind to run for public office in Israel. And she's the proud mother of Noah and Jonathan. Please welcome Yitzhak Rabin Center.
Mr. President, Mrs. Clinton, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, dearest members of my family. Before I begin my speech, I wish to thank you personally, Mr. President, and especially you, Mrs. Clinton, for making this day come true. We highly appreciate the way you opened the White House, and we know it's all about you and us sharing the same feelings of admiration and true love to this wonderful man. The terrible feeling of loss and frustration after the brutal assassination and the commitment to commemorate him in the only way he deserves, the best. It is our sacred duty, and we are so lucky and so grateful to have you as our partners. Thank you. It is my honor to be with you here today on behalf of the Yitzhak Rabin Center for Israel Studies. The Rabin Center will serve as a museum, academic center, and memorial for my late father, performing much the same function that the presidential libraries serve here in the United States. The Rabin Center was founded at a time of national and international grief over the assassination of a great man who was also a great statesman, a moment of terrible grief. But while I cannot speak to you today without always bearing in mind the manner in which my father was slain, the Rabin Center stands in memory not only of his death, but also, and more elementally, of his life. And it is with some sense of the epic sweep of that life that I am privileged to present you, Mr. President, and your wife, Hillary, with the Rabin Center's Shalom Chaver Award for International Leadership. In an age where public service is derided, it is probably hopelessly old-fashioned to note that my father devoted his entire life to the service of our country and our people. It is not just that his life spanned the entire life of his country, rather it is that at times his life seemed to actually be the life of his country's. He was there at Israel's greatest moments of peril and triumph, at the key junctures that went into the building of a democracy dedicated to the preservation of the Jewish people. By the time he strode with the stiff walk of a soldier onto the White House lawn alongside yourself, Mr. President, in the fall of 1993, to shake the hand of Yasser Arafat, he had already had a career that any politician would envy. But my father was interested in the truest form of leadership, the act, as the late Isaiah Berlin put it, of making things happen that simply would not have happened without the leader's will. Mr. President and Mrs. Clinton, you have spoken eloquently of America as the indispensable nation, the fulcrum of the international system. As with nations, so too with leaders. There are indispensable nations and there are indispensable people. Our region has seemed all too tragically to cost that is born when we are forced to do without our indispensable man. Yitzhak Rabin was taken from us by a coward's bullet. King Hussein ibn Talal of Jordan was taken from us by the ravages of disease. But there can be little higher tribute, little greater sense of why the Rabin Center felt it so important to bestow upon you this award than to remember how those two men felt about your leadership. In his last magnificent moment upon the world stage, the dying king stood in the White House at the Y signing ceremony and remembered the American presidents he had known from Eisenhower on and gave you, Mr. President, pride of place among the distinguished company. And I know firsthand of the deep bond that my father felt with you and Mrs. Clinton, and of his admiration for the way in which you worked to support those who took risks for peace. No American president and first lady have been better friends to the state of Israel. No American president and first lady have received so much love from the people of Israel. On that awful night when he was taken from us by a fanatic hater of peace, the words that echoed most lastingly with my fellow Israelis were those of a grieving American president, Shalom Chaver, goodbye, friend. Your words soon sprung up on bumpers and doors across Israel. They are still powerful because they are both a farewell and a promise. Goodbye, my friend, you told us. There will be peace, if it is within my power to bring it. In that sense, we give you today not only an award, but a challenge. Mr. President and First Lady, our nations are in some ways very different and in other ways very much alike. We share a common democratic heritage, a love of liberty, and a contempt for those who seek to settle disputes through the horror of bloodshed, rather than the majesty of debate. But we Israelis lack America's splendid isolation. America is a shining city on a hill. Israel too shines, but its light is smaller, flickers more often, and is surrounded by the vast darkness of enmity, terror, and aggression. But part of America's glory has been its decision not to set itself apart from the affairs of the world and not to hold itself back from aiding the needy. You took your great office at a time of temptation when the siren's call of isolation was heard again, and it is your great historical achievement to have fought it. America has lent its might to peacemaking efforts not only in the Middle East, but the war-torn Bosnia, Northern Ireland, Haiti, and Kosovo. For this, as Israelis, we are gladdened and moved. But as Israelis, we would not speak our hearts if we did not tell you that this award stems in large part from our abiding gratitude for your steadfastness in pursuit of peace between us and our neighbors. We are under no illusion about peace. We know it will be hard-won, grudgingly given, and perpetually threatened. It's not so easy, said Yitzhak Rabin on the White House lawn in 1993 when he stood beside you, Mr. President, and shook the hand of an enemy turned into a partner in peace. Peace is not so easy. It takes leadership and it takes leaders. And it takes those leaders having the courage to take risks. You have done just that. As we present you with the Rabin Center's Shalom Chaver Award for International Leadership, we do so with gratitude for all you have done and with the hope that you will continue to have the courage to work for the peace that the children of Israel and the children of her Arab neighbors deserve. We have all had enough of blood and tears. Thank you very much.
Mr. President, Mrs. Clinton, honored guests, members of the Congress and the Senate, members of the Diplomatic Corps, members of our wonderful family, and so many very, very dear friends of us. On the 4th of November 1995, in the glare of the floodlights, with the sound of the cheering, loving crowd and the strains of the Song of Peace filling the night air, there in the city square, the 3 bullets were fired and the Prime Minister fell. 3 bullets, 1 man, darkness. It was after the Six-Day War, which so dramatically changed the map of the Middle East, that the commander of this overwhelming victory of the Israeli army turned to his Prime Minister, and said, "Mr. Eshkol, I believe I've done my share with the Israeli Defense Forces. Would you now let me go as an ambassador to Washington?" Whenever Yitzhak told the story, he always recalled with great amusement how shocked Mr. Eshkol was and how he reacted. "You, Yitzhak, to Washington as an ambassador? What are you going to do there? Stand around in cocktail parties with a glass in your hand? You, the Palmachnik, the soldier?" Eshkol was truly surprised, but Yitzhak insisted. "I believe this victory has opened the opportunity for peace, and I want to start and give this peace a chance. Only the United States of America will be there to support us in this process. Let me go. I really believe this is the right time to try." In February 1968, we arrived in Washington and spent 5 wonderful years here. And though for various reasons, Yitzhak's aspirations for peace were then premature, it was later proved how right he was in believing and trusting the United States' constant support of our military strengths, and at the same time, their readiness to be there for us in any effort to advance the cause of peace. It was his deep conviction, and throughout all the years, in all his various positions, he was indefatigably weaving the relationship between Israel, the American people, their representatives in Congress, the US administration, and the President of the United States. Throughout the years, he never had the slightest doubt in his mind that here lies our major source of support, and that from here we could realize our hopes for peace based on our own strengths and our ongoing friendship and ties with the United States and its formidable Jewish community. He always used to say, "We do not expect the Americans to shed one drop of blood for our survival in the Middle East. Just give us the means." The White House and its lawn, and I'm looking at the door, and that was the door. You were twice coming out. The White House and its lawn have witnessed and literally hosted all the peace agreements between Israel and its neighbors, starting with the signing of the Camp David peace accord between Israel and Egypt, through the famous handshake between Yasser Arafat and Yitzhak Rabin, which marked the end of the 100-year-old Israeli-Palestinian conflict and the beginning of a reconciliation process. And then, a year later, the handshake between His Majesty King Hussein and Rabin, which was later then finalized into a peace agreement in the Arafat ceremony. And then, of course, the signing of the Oslo II Accords in the East Room. It was always the President of the United States who was there, right in the middle between two leaders of the Middle East, coming together to end their long history of war in the presence and with the support of the US leader. I remember all those wonderful, overwhelming moments when we were privileged to witness the history of the Middle East taking a new turn. We, the wives of the leaders, hosted so graciously by the First Lady Hillary, hearing the beating of history's wings, with our husbands courageously shouldering the responsibility and taking the leading roles. None of us who were here will ever forget those pictures of the President, flanked by the Middle East leaders, striding out onto the White House lawn to the thundering applause of the hundreds of people who were here to witness this marking of a new chapter in the history of the region. We sensed the enormous hope, and we were overwhelmed with joy. I was proud of my husband, who had dedicated his entire life first to the defense of Israel, and now, as Prime Minister, was working so hard to make Israel a better place, a better society, and above all, proving how much Israel really desired peace, while the United States proved to be both true partner and supportive friend in building a new reality for the region. Yitzhak Rabin and President Clinton developed a unique relationship. One, the much older man representing a tiny country, the homeland for all Jewish people all over the world. The other, much younger, much taller. Leader, always towering between the two others. Taller. Leader of the world's greatest superpower, and yet together they created a chemistry which led them to broadcast on the same wavelengths, which made them meet on a common platform where the understanding for the need for peace could take real shape and flourish. But beyond this chemistry and mutual understanding, there was also a true mutual affection between these two men. And when we lost Yitzhak, It was the President of the United States who expressed his deep shock and sadness in the two beautiful words, Shalom Chaver. Mr. President, you have had the wisdom, the courage, the vision, and the empathy to be here for these so very significant ceremonies that marked the end of years and years of bloodshed. Always supported in your efforts by the First Lady Hillary Clinton, together you helped us seize the moment and bring light, sunshine, and new hope to our area. Sadly, we have lost Yitzhak in a brutal murder. King Hussein has just died after a cruel illness. What a terrible loss for all our countries. Today we have come once again to say thank you to you, Mr. President and Mrs. Clinton, our hosts for peace, for your friendship, and for the leadership without which all those chapters of peace could have never been written. Those beautiful ceremonies would never have taken place. The peace process was in dire need of you, and you rose to the challenge unflinkingly with all your might and courage. We are here today to thank you for all your support. The project of this wonderful Rabin Center commemorating Yitzhak Rabin, one of the formidable sons of the Jewish people who never spared any effort to build and defend the ties between Israel and Jews all over the world. Let us hope that this project proves worthy of him and will reflect the qualities of his unique personality, leadership, and aspirations. And now, Mr. President and Mrs. Clinton, I have the pleasure of introducing a recently produced film about Yitzhak, which I think successfully portrays the man and the leader and reflects on the horror of his assassination. The film was produced by Mr. Arnon Milchan, who is here with us today. Arnon, will you? Who also serves as chair of the American Friends of the Yitzhak Rabin Center. I want to take this opportunity to thank you, Arnon, for creating such a beautiful and sensitive film and for his dedication to preserving Yitzhak's legacy. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we shall see the film itself.
Yitzhak Rabin was my partner and my friend. I admired him, and I loved him very much. Because words cannot express my true feelings, let me just say, Shalom, Haver. Goodbye, friend.
I wish to thank each and every one of you who have come here today to take a stand against violence and for peace. I was a military man for 27 years. I fought so long as there was no chance for peace. I believe that there is now a chance for peace, a great chance. This is a course which is fraught with difficulties and pain, but the path of peace is preferable to the path of war.
Yitzhak Rabin lived the history of Israel. Through every trial and triumph, the struggle for independence, the wars for survival, the pursuit of peace, and all he served on the front lines.
At an age that most youngsters are struggling to unravel the secrets of mathematics and the mysteries of the Bible, at the tender age of 16, I was handed a rifle so that I could defend myself. That was not my dream. I wanted to be a water engineer. I thought being a water engineer was an important profession in the parched Middle East. I still think so today.
I had a platoon of teenagers. With no replacements left to fight, I had to send these kids into battle. When they arrived, they were ambushed. Over half these kids were killed. I do not remember how many were injured.
הייתה לי הרגשה נוראית, ילדים עד 15 אתה שולח אותם.
I had never thought that a moment would come like this, when I would grieve the loss of a brother, a colleague and a friend, a man, a soldier who met us on the opposite side of a divide, a man I came to know because I realized, as he did, that we have to cross over the divide, establish a dialogue, and strive to leave for those who follow us a legacy that is worthy of them.
For years, I secretly harbored the dream that I might play a part not only in gaining Israel's independence, but in restoring the Western Wall to the Jewish people, making it the focal point of our hard-won independence. Now that dream had come true, and suddenly I wondered why I, of all men, should be so privileged. I knew that never again in my life would I experience quite the same peak of elation. For me personally, the Six-Day War was the high point of a military career.
תסלחו לי שאני לא רוצה לדבר על השלום, אני רוצה לדבר על סבא שלי. תמיד מתעוררים מסיוט, אבל מאתמול אני רק מתעוררת לסיוט. הסיוט של חיים בלעדיך, וזה בלתי ניתן לעיכול. סבא, אתה היית עמוד האש שלפני המחנה, ועכשיו נותרנו רק מחנה, לבד, בחושך, וכל כך קר לנו ועצוב. אבל איך תנסה לנחם עם שלם, או לשתף אותו בכאב הפרטי שלך, כשסבתא לא מפסיקה לבכות?
My dear wife, when I look back over 24 years of marriage, I am sure that despite all the irritating arguments, it would be difficult to find among the couples that I know a better pair than us. I am certain that there was great luck in my life when I married you. We have been through so much together in times so critical for all of us that it seems as if the content of our lives could fill the lives of scores of families. Many kisses to you and to Yuval. Yitzhak. I was in a spot. If only I could dance even poorly. If only someone would get in ahead of me and invite Mrs. Ford onto the dance floor. But miracles of that nature do not occur at the White House. I'm sorry, Mrs. Ford, but I simply don't know how to dance, not a step. Have no fear, Mr. Prime Minister. When I was a young woman, I used to teach dance, and I protected my toes from men far less skillful than you. Come along. Dr. Kissinger, himself no great dancer, came to my rescue and managed to get me off the dance floor. If he had never done anything else for Israel, I would still be eternally grateful to Kissinger for that small mercy.
Allow me to make personal note. I, military ID number 30743, retired general in the Israel Defense Forces, consider myself to be a soldier in the army of peace today. Today we are embarking on a battle which has no dead and no wounded, no blood and no anguish. This is the only battle which is a pleasure to wage, the battle for peace.
יצחק, זהו הנאום האחרון. לא יהיו יותר. 5 דקות לפני שחלאת האדם ירה בך, שרת את שיר השלום מתוך נייר שנתנו לך בבית החולים, אחרי שהרופאים והאחיות בכו, נתנו לי את הנייר שמצאו בכיס הז'קט שלך. אני רוצה לקרוא עכשיו כמה מילים מתוך הנייר הזה, אבל קשה לי. הדם שלך, יצחק, הדם שלך מכסה על המילים המודפסות. דמך על נייר שיר השלום.
We should not let the land flowing with milk and honey become a land flowing with blood and tears. Don't let it happen. If all the partners to the peacemaking do not unite against the evil angels of death by terrorism, all that will remain are color snapshots, empty mementos. Rivers of hatred will overflow again and swamp the Middle East.
הוא באמת לא רק בתפילות, קודם כל בתפילות, אבל הוא שאיפת העם היהודי, שאיפה אמיתית לשלום. חייבת לשמר לציבור הישראלי, לציבור היהודי בעולם, לרבים רבים בעולם הערבי ובעולם החיצוני, תומך בשלום, ועל כך תודה רבה.
Good afternoon to you all. I'm here to sing, but I'm very moved to say a few words. Please forgive me. Mr. President and First Lady Leah, Dalia, seeing these pictures from the rally, I can't help but remember that day I had the honor of being there together with Gil. We were performing just 10 minutes before it happened. And it was such a joyous day, turned into such a tragic and terrible and horrible one, where this man that I had grown to love like my uncle or father or a dear friend was so brutally taken away from me, I felt personally, and from my entire nation and the world. And I must tell you that from that day on, my life has not been the same and can never be the same. It's as if my life has been invested by a sense of mission or purpose that I'd never felt before. As if I had to take this torch that was left fallen on the floor and run with it as far as I possibly could and spread this light to as many people as I possibly could all over the world through music and words and anything that I could possibly do, and bear this torch of peace as bravely as I could. I think that I've come to learn through time that this idea of peace is not something that we can perceive as something that is in the future, as a goal that we must reach. I think the only way that we can live with peace is if it is our lives, if everything that we do comes from a place of peace, if it is the way that we choose, starting within ourselves, with our families, with our neighborhoods, and then 10 minutes across the border to people who we are often so unfortunately educated to hate. This is peace, slowly, step by step, learning to live this way, with respect and as much love as we can possibly muster. Yitzhak Rabin had a beautiful way about him, which I loved so much, a combination of strength and modesty and wisdom and open-mindedness. These qualities were his, and they are qualities that I think are shared very abundantly by you, Mr. President, and by you, First Lady, wonderful people, and so many other friends of peace around the world. This is Yitzhak Rabin's legacy, his wonderful legacy, and I will carry it with me always. And for this, it is a great, great honor to raise my voice.
תנו לשמש לעלות, לבוקר להאיר, הזעקה שבתפילות אותנו לא תחזיר. מי אשר קבע נאור ובעפר נטמן, בחימה לא יאירו, לא יחזירו לכאן. איש אותנו לא ישיב מבוא תחתית אפל, כאן לא יועילו לא שירת הניצחון ולא שירי הלל. על כן רק שירו שיר לשלום, אל תלחשו תפילה, מוטב תשירו שיר לשלום מצעקה גדולה. שאו עיניים בתקווה, לא דרך כוונות. שיר שיר לאהבה ולא למלחמות. אל תגידו יום יבוא, הביאו את היום, כי לא חלום, ובכל הכיכרות הריעו לשלום. על כן רק שירו, שיר לשלום, אל תלחשו תפילה. מוטב תשירו, שיר לשלום, מצעקה גדולה. שירו, שיר לשלום, אל תלחשו תפילה. שירו, שיר לשלום, מצעקה גדולה.
Ladies and gentlemen, as you know, His Majesty King Hussein of Jordan was Yitzhak's partner in the battle for peace. We all mourn the loss of the king, and I want to ask you now to observe a moment of silence in his memory. Thank you. אני חושבת שעכשיו את צריכה לבוא איתי. עוד לא, אבל בואי, בבקשה. ככה. We are pleased to announce today that the Board of Directors of the Yitzhak Rabin Center for Israel Studies has decided to name the two gardens that surround the center in honor of Yitzhak Rabin's partners in peace. The Eastern Garden have been named the King Hussein Memorial Peace Gardens. And at a ceremony a few moments ago, we presented an official proclamation to the Jordanian ambassador to the United States, Mr. Marwan al-Masher. And if I may add, during a recent telephone conversation with Her Majesty Queen Noor, she expressed her delight and consent, noting that the king was not only a champion of peace in the Middle East, but also of nature preservation. Thus, the Queen remarked that the tribute is not only an honor, but entirely appropriate. And now, I would like to invite the President and the First Lady to join us for the Center's Western Gardens have been named in their honor. As you know, the President and First Lady have been instrumental in the efforts to secure peace in our region. As Dalia so eloquently explained earlier, their leadership in the international arena has served as an inspiration to all of us. Therefore, when we decided to create an annual award recognizing extraordinary achievement by world leaders in the international relations, it was only natural that the first Shalom Chaver International Leadership Award should go to President William Jefferson Clinton and First Lady Hillary Rodham Clinton.
The 1999 Shalom Chaver Award for International Leadership, awarded to President William Jefferson Clinton and First Lady Hillary Rodham Clinton, with abiding gratitude and admiration for your courage in supporting those who took risks for peace, presented by the Yitzhak Rabin Center for Israel Studies, Washington, D.C., March 18, 1999. Mr. President.
Leah, Dalia, Noah, Yuval, Tali, Rahel, Hillary and I are honored to welcome you here. We are honored by the Shalom Chaver Award and the Peace Garden and the power of your example. Thank you, Noah, for the beautiful song. I thank the members of the cabinet who are here, the administration, especially Secretary Albright and Mr. Berger, and I want to say a special word of thanks to all those who have been on our peace team now and for the last 6 years. Mr. Ross, Mr. Endick, before them, Secretary Christopher, Mr. Lake, and others. I welcome the members of the Diplomatic Corps who are here. I think it would be worth noting as a particular tribute to Prime Minister Rabin that the members of the Diplomatic Corps who are here are the ambassadors of Jordan, Egypt, Tunisia, Morocco, Qatar, Oman, and the PLO. Welcome. I thank Congressman Lantos,
Louis, and Loie for being here. We have many distinguished guests from Israel, including General and Mrs. Mordechai and Mrs. Barak. We thank you for being here, all of our guests from Israel, and all of our American guests. Thank you for coming, in the words of Prime Minister Rabin, to make a stand against violence and for peace. We are gratified to know that this Rabin Center will promote Yitzhak's legacy and his vision of a Middle East and a world where people do not have to die for peace, but can actually live in peace and enjoy it. I still remember quite clearly the meeting we had in March of 1993 when the Oslo Agreement was still months away, but he had already foreseen the bold steps he would have to take. He shared with me his assessment of the danger posed by the adversaries in the Middle East. As I recall, he called it a marriage of extremists and missiles. He understood that Israel needed a strategic peace, a circle of peace with others in the region to isolate and weaken extremists. All I could say to him then, and all I can do now, is to state again that as Israel takes risks for peace, the United States will do everything in its power to minimize those risks and advance that cause. Today, I also thank Leah and Dahlia for remembering our friend, His Majesty King Hussein. In a humorous moment in an otherwise profoundly somber day, at his funeral, I was standing with another leader of the Arab world whom I dare not mention for fear of embarrassing him, and we noticed standing there at the King's funeral, Prime Minister Netanyahu, General Barak, and General Mordechai. And the leader looked at me and he said, "This is truly an amazing world. King Hussein is the only thing they agree on." Hussein and Yitzhak Rabin were brave soldiers who had the courage to tell the hard truth that there would be no security for any in the Middle East without fairness for all, that the time had come to lift people's hopes, not exploit their fears, to reach across the divide of history and hatred, to fulfill the true promise of the Promised Land. They knew well enough that extremists would try to derail the peace accord by keeping fear and frustration, mistrust and misery dominant in the lives of ordinary Palestinians and Israelis. But they were determined to turn back the tide, and so they did. How we gloried in those brilliant days in 1993 and 1995, when the leaders of the Middle East gathered here to grasp hands and pledge to build a safer and better future. How we enjoyed those first halting steps toward reconciliation. Even then there was humor. I will never forget when Yitzhak promised me in September of '93 that he would shake Mr. Arafat's hand as long as there was no kissing. But it wasn't long after that, and they came here to sign all the maps to embody in concrete terms the accord which had been reached, when a dispute arose, and it was at the last minute and no one knew how to resolve it. So I showed them back to my private dining room and I said, "I believe I could find Jericho, but otherwise I don't know much about this map. You guys go in that room and solve it. We'll wait till it's done. And they sat there alone and resolved the problem. Today, the people of the Middle East still have a chance to build the secure peace of Prime Minister Rabin's dreams, to isolate the extremists, to weaken their ability to shatter the peace with terrorism or missiles or weapons of mass destruction. But it is just a chance. I can still hear the strong voices of Yitzhak Rabin and King Hussein speaking to us today and saying, push ahead with the peace process. Build on Oslo and Wye River before it is too late. But today their voices must be embodied by others all across the Middle East. Tzarich Chaverim LaShalom. We need friends of peace. The loss of Yitzhak Rabin, the premature death of His Majesty King Hussein, make it time and past time for all in the Middle East to remember the wisdom of the ages. Life is fleeting. When we return to dust, our differences are as nothing. All that remains is our legacy. It must be an affirmation of our common humanity. Why is it we can only see the humanity we share when we lose someone we love? Long ago, Leah said it very well. In 1975, at a women's conference in Mexico City, she said this: "War solves nothing. Our area thirsts for peace for the benefit of all peoples living there. Our true enemies are poverty, illiteracy, disease, and inequality of opportunity." Leah, you and Yitzhak lived the history of Israel together from your marriage in the year of your nation's birth. From the ashes of the Holocaust and the seeds of the diaspora, you fought for independence and survival. You helped to build the enlightened, vibrant, democratic society that Israel is today. And I want to say that we are very grateful to you for your sacrifices, for your contributions to help build an Israel that is strong and free, prosperous, and at peace. We thank you. That is also America's cause in the Middle East and in Central America, where I visited last week, and where longtime adversaries and civil wars now reach across great divides. And in Northern Ireland, the land of my ancestors, whose leaders I met with yesterday, where we are so close to finishing the job. And in the former Yugoslavia, where we are determined to avoid in Kosovo a repeat of the terrible, senseless bloodshed of Bosnia. And in Africa, where too much blood still is being shed, but whose leaders came here this week in a remarkable display of unity to seek a partnership of freedom and opportunity with the United States. In all these places, the struggle for peace continues, and we must continue it in the Middle East, between Israelis and Palestinians and all across the region, because every day we delay the process of peace strengthens the extremists and supports their violent designs. I would like to close with 3 admonitions. We must not grow weary. The psalmist says, do good, seek peace, and pursue it. We must not harden our hearts in the face of all that has been lost. Shakespeare said it best, the quality of mercy is not strained. It droppeth as the gentle rain from heaven upon the place beneath. It is twice blessed. It blesseth him that gives and him that takes. Let us give it and take it. And finally, we must not lose faith. Yitzhak Rabin once quoted these words from the poet Chernyakhovsky, I believe in the future. That day will come when peace and blessings are born from nation to nation. And he added, I want to believe that that day is not far off. With the help of a merciful God, we will hasten the day of Yitzhak Rabin's dreams. Shalom. Salam. Thank you and God bless you.